Let's talk about some of these other guys from the Saints draft class. We've talked about the quarterback Tyler Shuck in length, but let's talk about some of the other ones. Starting with the first one, Kelvin Banks Jr. Now, this is a guy who, and I promise I'm not just saying this because the Saints ended up drafting him, but throughout this whole draft process, I would look at mock drafts and I would see that Kelvin Banks Jr. was like being mocked in the late teens or the 20s. I think the earliest I seen him, mocked was like to the Bears at I believe what 13. And I'm just sitting there going like, I don't know about that one. Like I watched a lot of this guy's football games and he seemed just better than that. Even though he was getting mocked in the middle of the first round, he just I knew he was better than that and he was gonna get taken higher than that. So the fact that it was actually the Saints that ended up taking him, I couldn't have been happier. This is a guy again, it's hard enough to find good quality offensive linemen in the NFL. But when you can find one that is as versatile as he is, that can really come in and play either position of guard or tackle, that's unmatched, right? Anytime you can get a guy like that that can help your team in multiple ways, you do it. He's super athletic. He can move well in space. His feet are beautiful. He can redirect. He can, he's strong. He can go on the run in those screens, outside zones. He could do it all. Of course, just like any other player, there are weaknesses. What I wrote down after watching, his games back, he leans a little too much into his punches at times in pass protection and in the run game, and it'll cause him to get, thrown off balance, especially in those sort of push pull moves by defensive linemen. And in the run game, his hand placement isn't the best. And again, that sort of combining that with the fact that he leans a little too much, it has him end up on the ground a little too more often than you would like. So in terms of his weaknesses, he really doesn't have a lot. It's just he leans a little bit too much in his punch and pass protection, and also his hands in the run game. But those are two things that are coachable, right? Those are two things that are technique based that you can always get better at. So Kelvin Banks Jr., in my opinion, home run pick. Tyler Shuck again, like I said, we talked about him already. Just go over it real quickly. His weakness, pressure. He's got to get better versus pressure. Be more willing to stand in there and take those shots to deliver balls, and also off-platform stuff. A lot of times, just like other guys with big arms, they rely a little too much on that arm, and so when he has a chance to really set his, like, say he like gets out of the pocket, and when he has a chance to set his feet outside the pocket, he would rather just use his arm, and sometimes that can lead to some inaccuracies. But again, that's another thing that can get cleaned up. And I've talked about his strengths in in um in length, so you can go back to my last video. Basically, great arm, can do it all, prototypical quarterback, pretty much. So third pick, Vernon Brotten, defensive lineman out of Texas. I watched a lot of his games and basically came to the conclusion that he's going to be there to stop the run. I don't really see him developing into a pass rusher. Of course, I would love for him to prove me wrong, but I do think he's going to play. Um, I do think he'll play. He'll be a rotational piece year one. I think that he is. He can really stand against a double team. He's hard to block one on one in the run game, and again, versus even those double teams in the run game, oftentimes he'll split those and make a tackle. At the line of scrimmage or um, even in the backfield. But some of his negatives, he's not a real twitchy player. He's kind of slow off the ball at times. Doesn't really have a huge arsenal in terms of um, pass rushing moves. So I think he's being brought in to help with that, shore up that run game, and the Saints need it, of course. Then we'll move to Jonas Sanker, okay, and safety. And listen, this guy is a lot of fun to watch. Okay, I watched probably 4 or 5 of his games now. He is a guy who will not think twice about flying downhill to pop you in the mouth. That's just the player that Jonas Sanker is. I think from day one, he is going to be a menace on special teams, and then probably work his way into a big time role on the field for the Saints. On the Saints, of course, they got Justin Reed, Tyron Matthews, so that those guys are kind of you know penciled in, or not even penciled in, or wrote in permanent marker to be the starters. But Jonas Sanker will see some time on the field as well. Um, I think he'll be better as like a half field safety rather than like a post safety, just because it allows him to play a little more in a tight window, um, and you know get you know get downhill quick, see it, and go hit it. I think pursuit angles is one of his weaknesses. A lot of times he takes some pretty poor pursuit angles. It'll cause like the receiver or the running back to run right by him. And other than that, his eyes. I think he needs a little bit better eye discipline. A lot of times he can get caught looking in the backfield, and a receiver in his zone will run right past him. So those are the two things I think he needs to work on. But all in all, I think he's definitely a player who could, without a doubt, develop in the future into a starter. Quincy Riley, cornerback out of Louisville. Look, this is another guy that has been in school a long time. He was a sixth year senior. And this guy, the first thing I noticed watching him is his hips, man. He's got some fluid hips. He can turn smooth. His feet are like really nimble, really soft, quick feet. Um, and but the again with him, sort of like Jonas Sanker, his weakness to me is his eye discipline. He can also get caught sort of looking in the backfield or looking, where his eyes aren't supposed to, and a guy will run right past him. He also needs to get a little bit better at be willing being willing to go down and help in run support and make a tackle. So he's kind of the opposite of Jonas Sanker in that regard. Like, you know, but again, one's a safety, one's a corner, but Sanker will come down and pop you, and Riley kind of just he'll be there, but he could be there a little bit more. Um, and then we move on to Devin Neil, sixth round pick, running back. Listen, I think the only thing that made this guy get drafted so late is just speed, like speed and burst. And I know those are, like you say, well, isn't that the main things you need for a running back? Well, it's, yeah, sort of, but you also need vision, patience, and understanding of the game and how to follow your blocks. And I think those are the things that Devin Neil has. You know, um, I wrote down he will get you what is blocked, right? He's not the most creative guy in the world, but he will get you what is blocked. He is not going to miss the hole. If it is blocked right from the offensive line, he will get you the yards that are created to begin. He's disciplined, and he also has really good hands out of the backfield, and he's a guy you can count on to protect the ball. He has a really, really low fumble rate. Um, and he also needs to work on his pass protection. He's not the greatest in pass protection, so he needs to work on that. But again, like the only negatives are kind of his initial explosiveness and his top end speed. But if he can consistently get you 5, 6, 7 yards, then who cares about the home runs, right? The home runs are nice, but 6, 7 yards or more a thing you need more consistently, or that you're going to get more consistently anyway. So Devin Neal, I'm a huge fan of that pick. Again, I think he would have gone a lot higher if he was just a little bit faster in the top end. Let's see. So let's move on to the tight end, Matzaval. He, we're at the seventh round at this point, right? What, sixth or seventh round? Seventh round. Yeah. He's a guy you take with the hopes that maybe he can turn into something a little more. He's a decent blocker. He's a big body, he's like your perfect size for an inline tight end. I don't think he has the best hand placement in terms of run blocking. He's not really the guy that's going to adjust to a ball. Like, say you throw him a ball down the seam, he's not really the type that's going to be able to consistently adjust to a back shoulder type of throw. Um, let's see, what else did I write down for him? His speed really isn't there. Uh, he doesn't really have like the you know top of the route quickness to get away from a defender. But he will catch the ball in traffic over the middle without flinching, right? Like if you just put him over the middle and you got to like get a quick pass for a third down conversion, put him over the middle in traffic, he's going to catch it. He don't mind taking a hit. So, he's got the size, he's got the tools, the physical traits to maybe develop into something more. But right now, especially with the way that the Saints tight end room is built right now, I don't really see him um, getting on the field anytime soon. And then their last pick, Fadil Diggs out of Syracuse. I think that's how you say his first name, Fadil Diggs, whatever. He's got good size and length. He's a 3-time captain on 2 different teams, which tells you the kind of man he is, the kind of leadership he can bring. And I think that's really important when you bring in a new head coach, Kellen Moore, to establish what you want the locker room to be. You bring in a bunch of guys who are locker room leaders, and that seemingly is what Diggs is. I mean, 3-time captain on 2 different teams. Um, he's got some explosiveness to him at times, but it's not really consistent. He is an effort guy. Like that's the very first thing I wrote down watching him is effort. He gives all the effort in the world. In the run game, mm, he's not very disciplined, not very instinctive, I guess you should say. But in terms of pass rushing, which I think is more of what he's being brought in to do as a rotational pass rusher, he'll give you a good inside move every once in a while. And again, in terms of like winning one-on-one with tackles, he's more of an effort player than a guy that's just going to consistently beat you with a pass rush move. So all in all, I think the Saints came away with a decent draft. Nothing crazy. I think that they came away with a draft class full of guys who are going to play. This isn't them drafting Isaiah Foskey in the second round. This is a draft class that you look at it and you can really see a case for all of these guys getting on the field, other than maybe the tight end and even him, maybe in special teams. But, the seventh round picks, at that point, you're kind of just taking a flyer on them, right? But if you look at like the early and the middle round picks, like Kelvin Banks Jr. is going to be a starter day one. Tyler Shuck, by all accounts, it looks like he's probably going to be a starter. Vernon Brotten is going to be a rotational piece in there to help stop the run. Jonas Sanker, again, I think he's going to get. I think he's going to be a starter on special teams, but I think he's also going to get some play time on the defense. And then Quincy Riley. Another thing I didn't mention about him is he has a lot of experience in a match coverage system at Louisville, which is what Brandon Staley runs on defense. So, and if you look at the Saints DB room, the cornerback room, it's not very deep right now. So there's a big chance that he could be on the field come week one. And then Devin Neil, I mean, you can't count on Kendre Miller at this point, right? You just can't. I seen he changed his number to 5, but I think Devin Neil is it's going to be Alvin Kamara and Devin Neil is 1 and 2. Because again, you just can't count on Kendre Miller. I hope Miller stays healthy because he's shown flashes, but he's also not shown us anything to prove that he can stay healthy, right? So I think, Devin Neal, even being a sixth rounder, right, is a guy that is going to get on the field and stay on the field a lot, as that 1 and 2 punch right there with Alvin Kamara. And then Diggs, again, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him as a rotational pass rusher when some of the other guys are tired, So all in all, a solid draft class. Obviously, nobody knows how anything is going to pan out, but we can all just hope for the best. Appreciate you guys watching. Peace.